Good evening, everybody, or good morning. The topic of my lecture and also of my PhD is interchanges between Latin American liberation theologians, which liberation theology we will talk about a little bit actually during the whole time together, is about an attempt of radicalizing theology so it can engage in the real problems of, in this case, the Latin American peoples, which is problems of oppression, of poverty, of course, of political instability. So what these theologians, Latin American theologians, sought to do is to bring theology to the field of politics, or vice versa, to bring politics in the field of theology, in order to actually speak the language of most Latin American people that at that time, and also today, but maybe a little less, were mostly Catholics. Latin America is the only third world continent which is mostly Catholic. That's the uniqueness of this continent, and that's why also religious ideas also have so much weight in a continent like Latin America. I'm speaking now generally as Latin America, but of course there are many nuances and differences between different countries, which I won't be able to address too much in the short minutes we have together, but it's not, of course, one unique piece, but many different situations and countries. They have yet a lot in common, which is, as I say, they share political instability and social inequality that make them we can define the Latin American modern history as an attempt to articulate or to come to terms with their own independence, since most of Latin American countries became independent from their colonizers, mostly Spain or Portugal, 200 years ago, but still then until today, they're trying to understand what that identity or that independence mean or could mean or should mean. In this context of a search for a national or continental independence or identity or independence, cultural independence, it was a common practice that many young intellectuals, mostly Catholic young intellectuals, they were sent to Europe in order to complete their studies and their formation in theology and philosophy. And those young intellectuals studied mostly in the big centers of what was taking place in Europe of the 60s, the movement of Catholic renovation, which peak was, of course, the Second Vatican Council. It started before and longed for much longer than the Council. So our intellectuals, the Latin American theologians, they travel to Europe in order to achieve the tools to articulate their own Latin American identity. And in centers like the Catholic University of Leuven, Belgium, or the Institut Catholique de Paris, or in Lyon, and other, or in Germany, in Munich, and other centers of intellectual Catholic dialogue, these Latin American young persons also receive not only philosophy and theology, but also that there was their first contact with the Jewish thought. And it turns to be that this Jewish thought would be one of the pillars in which their later liberation theology will stand. So my claim is that there are Jewish ideas that stand at the core of liberation theology, and we will see here little examples of how these Jewish ideas became to be intertwined in the liberation theology. So this, I'm sure we won't get to do all of this, but these are the points. We will start with this quote of Enrique Dussel. Enrique Dussel, one of these young intellectuals that traveled from Argentina to Paris and to Madrid, and he will become later one of the fathers of liberation theology. He said, everything that the liberation theology expressed theoretically, I experienced in advance with Paul. We will see who is Paul. Paul in Nazareth. The preferential option for the poor was his obsession, and the criticism leveled against us, liberation theologians in the 70s, will crumble under the weight of the judgment of history. The sacred experience of the option for the poor is essential to Christianity, and I discovered it in Nazareth in 1959. So there's a lot to uncover in this paragraph, but the main thing is that for Enrique Dussel, he traveled to Europe in order to find his Latin American identity, but instead of Europe, he found it in a short trip he made to Israel in 1959. Why? Because he met this person, Paul, which is Paul Gutierrez. Paul Gutierrez influenced liberation theology. If you tap Paul Gutierrez in Wikipedia in French, for example, you will see Paul Gutierrez, forefather of Latin American liberation theology. He could be something like a grandfather of liberation theology. Why? Because he influenced both Enrique Dussel and Vatican II. He was a key person at the Second Vatican Council. Paul Gutierrez was a priest, a French priest, who fought in the resistance during the war, and then he was a seminary teacher in Dijon, but he made a short trip to the land of Israel, and he fell in love with the young state, the young Zionist state, and he decided to settle here in Nazareth. Okay, it was not uncommon, of course, to see clergy, like Catholic persons here, of course not in Nazareth or also in Jerusalem, but this figure was still unique because he not only was a priest in Nazareth, he was a priest in Nazareth who was very, very connected to the Jewish young society of Israel, and much of his theology, the theology that he will develop mostly in the 12 years he lived in Nazareth, was inspired both by the experiences of Arab Israelis here in Nazareth, but also by the experience of the Jewish young state of Israel of the 50s and the 60s. And he will bring all this spirit and mixture of cultures to the Second Vatican Council, to Vatican II. he will be invited to Vatican II, and he will be one of the fosters of the Church of the Poor. The Church of the Poor was an informal group within the council that wanted to foster the idea that the Catholic Church should regain the image of poverty and homily that they had before it became so pompous and so rich. And actually, he wanted not to come back to the biblical image, but yes, to retrieve this poverty of the church, especially in light of the existence of so many Catholics that are actually poor. So he wrote during his stay in Israel a short pamphlet called Jesus, the Church, and the Poor. And this short text was distributed to the 2,000 fathers of the council. And in this text, he describes his experience, again, not only in Nazareth, which was by then a place full of social emergency due to the result of the Israeli-Arab war. Nazareth received many thousands of refugees from Arab villages, so there was a lot of sanitary problems and crowd and Paul Gutierrez, one of the things that he did in Nazareth was he organized a cooperative of work for Arab housing. So he organized Arab people to build their own housing, and it was special because it was the first time that the Israeli government would put money in Arab housing, and it was with the merit of Paul Gutierrez. So this experience was narrated in the text that was given to the council fathers. He, for example, writes, in order to be in communion with Jesus the laborer, this priest Gutierrez asked his bishops and obtained permission to live and work among the little folk. He saw that Nazareth, in modern and very socially oriented Israel, would be a perfect place to deepen the spiritual basis of an apostolic life in a working milieu, for the evangelization of the poor and the establishment of the church in the world of manual labor. So again, not only Nazareth, but also the modern and very socially oriented Israel were the base for Gutierrez's theology of work. And this figure became very popular also not only among council fathers and not only among Catholics in Nazareth, but also by the Israeli press. I found in the National Library many articles, many articles about this figure, and many journalists would come to Nazareth in order to interview this priest that was nevertheless dressed in what was called Haki clothes. So, he was dressed like a halutz, like a pioneer. So a priest, but dressed not like a clergyman, but as a Jewish pioneer. This is from the Israeli press, what was written on him. And he thought that his mission in this world is to bring, if not peace, at least understanding or dialogue between Jews and Arabs. Again, we are talking about not many years after the war, and in Nazareth, as all the Arab settlements of Israel, there was a military regime quite tight for the circulation of Arab citizens. So within all of that, Gutierrez thought and acted for bringing this understanding through his cooperative of work, but also he discovered the kibbutzim. This is the houses like they look today in Schneller neighborhood in Nazareth, the houses that he built by then in the 50s and 60s. But Gutierrez discovered the kibbutzim, and he saw in the kibbutzim a model that young Catholic clergy should learn from in order to apply pastoral work in suburbs and working neighborhoods in Europe, in Paris, or wherever. And in the kibbutzim, there is no exploitation of man by man. There's a more human life. All of this, again, is written in the text that ended up in Vatican II. And he also made, he had some lectures during the council. In one of them, they are recorded, and I got to listen to them. And he says, you, the church, you clergymen, are very worried and have declared war against secularism, but you should know that there is in Israel the way of life. There are something like 3,000 people that are they describe themselves as secular and even Marxist, but they live a more Christian life than many of us. So he was very brave and very bold, saying things like this. And of course, all of this impacted the bishops that were attending the council. One of the most maybe famous or curious things that Gutierrez initiated was the Pact of the Catacombs, which was a secret pact of poverty that 40 bishops signed in secret in one midnight by the end of the council. So that's Paul Gutierrez. So okay, we some picture of the kibbutz, and also he made an agreement with one kibbutz Ginosar, in the northern shore of the Lake of Galilee, in which the kibbutz would receive and welcome students for priesthood who would come for 1 semester or 1 year in order to study Hebrew and to work alongside the Jewish pioneers. And some hundreds or thousands of or hundreds of these European and Latin American students of priesthood came to Ginosar, and even Pope John XXIII send a letter of greetings on thanks to Kibbutz Nosar. Thank you for your welcome to our students and stuff like this. Okay, I will skip this because I want to get into other figures, but one of the ideas that most striked Paul Gutierrez was the work as a redemption, the redemption of work, and he took this from this Jewish philosopher and pioneer Aaron David Gordon. Gutierrez read Gordon very closely and even quoted him in the text for the council. The idea is that that manual work is not a necessity, but a way of praying and a way of redeeming ourselves. Gutierrez will Gutierrez will develop this and articulate his own version of this theology of work as redemption, but he says expressly that he took much of it from Aaron David Gordon. So I spoke about Enrique Dussel. Enrique Dussel came to Israel as a young student from Europe, from Argentina, but while he was studying in Europe, and he joined Gutierrez a cooperative of work, and in his time here, he discovered what he said in the first quotation I wrote, that everything that he will later write was experienced before in Israel, not only because of Paul Gutierrez, and he also was in Kibbutz Nosar was one of the students working in the kibbutz, but also because of the figure of Martin Buber. Martin Buber, here in the picture, he has one of the articulations of a longing for Jewish renovation that is connected to the land. So Buber, in a series of lectures from the beginning of the 20th century, 1910, 11, 12, he gave a series of lectures in the Bar Kochba student group of Prague, and then he speaks on the renaissance of the Jewish people, which will occur when the Semitic spark that is hidden in every Jew, even if she or he were born in Prague or in Poland or wherever. In every Jew there is a Semitic identity, a Semitic blood that has been renewed. What is the essence of this identity, of this spark, Semitic spark? Unity, deeds, in the sense of action, not only of reflection, which was very identified with Jewish existence, but also action and ethical action. Buber is known for his I and O and for his ethical system, and also for his affinity to the kibbutz lifestyle, even though he never joined one. And the idea of the future, the future bringing not only a redemption, but it's a future who bursts into the present and brings the newness of the future, influencing now our present. For Buber, this future is the best expressed in the idea of socialism. Buber said that unity, as I say, unity of not only the people of Israel and God, and the people of Israel with the state of the land of Israel, sorry, and the people of Israel within each other. And Dussel quotes from these lectures of Buber from 1910, and he says, what is needed for a Catholic renovation of Latin American peoples is similar things to what Buber proposed half a century before, that is unity, that is a direct connection between man or women and God, and ethical deeds, and the idea of the future, of the possibility of imagining another society, which is, as I say, socialism. So Dussel rewrote the call for the Jewish people that Buber made half a century before, in order to awaken the Semitic spark in every Jew. Dussel would transform that and say that there is a Semitic spark in every Christian, even if it's a Christian from Latin America, from the Amerindias. He makes interesting but very controversial connection between the ancient Bedouins of Israel, as described by Buber in another text in the kingship of God. He sees in the ancient people of Israel, Dussel, the model for a society which is not possessed by party politics, and is not possessed by corruption and greediness and everything that church and politics bring. Something much more free and much more authentic, and that Dussel gets from Buber. So Buber speaks about the collective fertility and the ecstatic singing of both the ancient Bedouin of the land of Israel and the Amerindians, the American Christianized peoples. And the other event that connects Judaism with liberation theology has to do with Vatican II, again, but from another aspect. We know the famous Nostra Aetate declaration, but I try to show in my dissertation, in a lot of pages that I'm resuming here very shortly, that there is a Jewish connection beyond Nostra Aetate. Nostra Aetate, the declaration saying that the Catholic Church should change the attitude towards the Jews, stop accusing them of killing Jesus, and stop trying to convert them to Catholicism. The other two underground currents of connection, which I found, is Ressourcement. Ressourcement was a movement that began in France during the 30s, but especially during the 40s and 50s, of Catholic priests and theologians that wanted to, like the Latin Americans, they wanted to give the church or the theology that was mostly scholastic by those times. They wanted to give the Catholic theology a strong connection to history and a strong connection to what they call signs of the times. And for the other hand, on the other hand, they wanted to bring back Christianity to its sources, among them Judaism. The claim was that, for example, Nazi Catholicism, they tried to clean Catholic theology from any Jewish indication and any Jewish roots, and the Resource More movement, it was also, of course, a political act of opposition to Nazism. They said we should return to the Jewish and not only Jewish, also patristic sources of Christianity. From that, bringing back the church to the contemporary world and history and the return to the Jewish sources is two other approaches which also even were called by their conservative opponents Judaizing. Theologians like Hans Ulf von Balthasar and others, Ratzinger in a certain way, who just passed away, they would accuse these progressive theologians like Yves Congar and Marie-Dominique Chenu and Karl Rahner, the German, and others. The conservatives would call them what they were doing Judaizing, because this is the signs of the time is one of the most important statements of Vatican II. The Church has the duty of scrutinizing the signs of the times. This was called Judaizing by many because of positions like this of Gershon Scholem, who said any discussion of the problem of relating to Messianism is a delicate matter, for it is here that the essential conflict between Judaism and Christianity has developed and continues to exist. Judaism in all its forms and manifestations has always maintained the concept of redemption as an event which takes place publicly on the stage of history and within the community. This is in contrast to Christianity, to conceive redemption in the other world. Okay, there's also different positions both in Judaism and in Christianity, but it was the common sense of the time and even today that Judaism is this word bonded, and Christianity is the spiritual next word oriented. And the Latin American theologian that we mentioned at the beginning, they translated these novelties of Vatican II, both in the sense of the Church of the Poor and the sense of the signs of the time and the returning of the Church to history and to the Jewish sources, into political manifest. This person, Gustavo Gutierrez, one of the other of the fathers of liberation theology, he wrote a book called Liberation Theology, and also was one of the students in Europe during the 50s and 60s. He says the Christian community is beginning in fact, to read politically the signs of the times in Latin America. And for Gustavo Gutierrez, the Peruvian, the I'm skipping all this. One of the key concepts for this returning to history and politicizing, radicalizing Catholic theology is the idea of the Exodus. They will, not against, but different from European theology, Latin American Liberation Theologians will rise the story of the Exodus to its maximum expression. They will say the Exodus is the proof that people that are enslaved can have the power to liberate themselves with the help of God, but they are doing that by themselves. This is the desacralization of social practice in the way that redemption and liberation are not a spiritual religious matter, but a secular matter, and that we Gutierrez learned from many Jewish sources, but one of the most striking he quotes very extensively in his book, this Jewish philosopher André Neher, French philosopher post-Holocaust or Holocaust survivor, André Neher, and Gutierrez takes Neher's idea of Jewish Passover and transforms it in a direct call for political action, not only political action, but for a revolution, for taking part in political struggles and to bring a revolutionary action. And yeah, the idea that through the story of the Exodus, history can be desacralized, and creation can be desacralized, and this is what brings our social praxis in the path of liberation. There's another example regarding Emmanuel Levinas, which is a very important a source for Latin American liberation theologians. We won't get there, but maybe in the next time. And yeah, that's it. Sorry, that's it for now. I just wanted to show the path that we very quickly, too quickly, we went through some different, we went to different figures and different points of connection on interchanges between Latin American liberation theology and Jewish thought and Jewish sources. The bottom line would be that these Catholic theologians were looking for a way to engage Catholic theology or Catholic practice into political action, political agency, and they couldn't find this language of politics within traditional Catholic theology, and they found this political radicalization, this language to bring theology to political radicalization. They found it not in Catholic traditional theology, but in Jewish thought, and they kind of translated Jewish thought into a theology of revolution for Latin America. So it is arguable at what extent this theology did succeed in making a change, a social change for Latin America. In certain ways it did, because some of the ways of actions of liberation theology was creating what was known as base ecclesial communities. Some communities in working and impoverished neighborhoods that surrounding about church and about Catholic and religious life, but also in a model similar to what Paul Gutierrez established in Nazareth. They founded these communities of socially involved people that managed to change the life to change for the better lives of many persons, though it didn't change the system that they were condemning, but that's something. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Silvana, for this really not obvious, I mean, the lecture, very interesting lecture about really not obvious things. And you really touched many points, many subjects, I mean, in many surnames especially. So actually somebody just asked, if there is a slide available. So no, but I would like to remind you that this lecture is recorded and will be available in around 2 days under the link which I just posted and I'm posting here again. So please check this website. This is our website with cultural events and recorded lectures. And if any one of you would like to, because we have still a few minutes, not a lot, but okay, here is someone anonymous wrote a question. Could you briefly describe Emmanuel Levinas and comment on his importance to liberation theology? Well, I guess it's a separate lecture, but briefly.
Okay, yeah, I can say it in one sentence. Levinas is known for being the philosopher of otherness, and liberation theologians were part of what was in vogue in those years, the post-colonial discourse. Part of the post-colonial discourse was to present the third world and the oppressed people as the other of the West. So Levinas actually gave these theologians, and not only them, but they leveraged Levinas very well. They gave it the language to define third world and Latin American or others or Asians or African peoples as the others of the West. That's one thing, and the other is they transform for Levinas is the face of the other. Liberation theologians translated it into the face of the Latin American people, which is, I argue in my dissertation that it's quite far from the original intention of Levinas, and he probably he didn't agree. He read some of the work of liberation theologians and he didn't like it, but that's another story.
Yes, of course. Okay, thank you for this answer. Actually, we have a few more, but I will just pick up one or two, because unfortunately, we have limited time due to the fact that Silvana is at the university and the building will be closed soon, which we didn't know before. So one of those, Alessandra Alio is asking, which country or countries from Latin America have continued and continue till nowadays to show Judaism influence, and why?
Had continued to?
Which countries in Latin America still continue to show Judaism influence into their thoughts, political thoughts, theologies maybe?
It's hard to talk about countries because, as I said at the end of my talk, the liberation theology couldn't manage to become a national policy. They remained being local communities of socially committed Catholics, but liberation theology did did have an impact in, I can speak about Argentina, my country, which has a lot of what is called curas obreros, is the priests that work within neighborhoods. This is a quite straightforward continuation of liberation theology. There's a lot of people that argue that the fact that we have an Argentinian Pope and Pope Francisco, which is also one of the students of the last theologian that I didn't talk about, is Juan Carlos Scannone. Francisco is the student, or was a student of Scannone. Scannone was the one who brought Levinas to Latin America. So it's a very complicated connection, but there is connection.
Well, there's really many connections and non-obvious. Okay. Actually, there are still a few questions, and what I propose, because we don't want Silvana will be closed for
no,
the
it's
night.
okay. I can.
Are you sure? Because I mean, I can also send you the questions, and I can connect you with. Is it okay with you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So what I propose, dear audience, that I have all your questions, and I will connect you still today or tomorrow with Silvana with your question, and Silvana will be able to answer. But and I see Franz Street, you are raising your hand, but please, if you can write your question here or send me an email, and then I will also connect you. But the very last question, Robert is asking, will your PhD will be published?
Hopefully.
Hopefully, okay.
So some of it is published in some articles. I can send you.
Okay, so let's do like this, that please do send me your article, which were published, and I have a list of our guest attendees, and I will send you during this week. So Silvana, once more, thank you very much. It was, we have also very nice comment, excellent presentation. Thank you so much. And as I promised, I will connect you and will send you the questions, so nobody will feel omitted. Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.